problem at all. I'm a little concerned about the announcement just before because everybody's going to be sending a message or getting on the phone to their accountant really quickly. So I appreciate you may be slightly distracted. What I'd like to do over the next 8 minutes is really kind of pique your interest about change management because all of you within the room are associated with change in some way. And specifically change management when it comes to technology or data transformation that involves a change in the way people work, how they work, or indeed what they do. Perfect, thank you. Thanks, James. Yeah, go on, cheers. Because as we all know that even if that digital transformation is going to help a salesperson or a service person perform better, they don't always do what's best for them. And we know that in life, don't we? We know when we're trying to lose weight and at 9 o'clock at night we open the fridge and we get a beer and a packet of crisps. We know it's not good for us, but we're still creatures of habit. So how do we go about changing people for the better? Change management as a concept actually started off in the 60s, and it started off with the worst type of change you can have. And that's change when you experience a bereavement of a loved one. The work from Kubler-Ross in the 60s looked at the fear, anger, denial and resentment that happens as negative emotions when that type of change happens. And at some point you come to a period of acceptance and then you're able to move on. And it was adopted into corporate landscape late 60s, early 70s. And now what we see with change management often is that it's lost the human touch. The management is about the processes, the systems, the tools that are in place. But what we want to make sure we get is the human touch, and that's where change leadership comes in. Change leadership looking at the vision, the coaching conversations that take place, the big purpose why, and the energy behind that change. So if we can get change management and change leadership as the perfect balance, because any one of those in isolation of the other, and your change will fail. But if we can get that balance right, then we've got a much better chance of making change work. It was estimated that this year approximately $2 trillion is going to be spent on digital transformation globally. And research historically over the last 5 or 10 years from the likes of Gartner and McKinsey consistently show that change management projects fail to meet their objectives between 50 and 60% of the time. They have mixed results around 15% of the time and only hit their objectives around 30% of the time at best. So you can see that there is a real challenge between the two, between making change happen and avoiding the inefficiencies and the costs involved of it failing. And whether those costs are involved at a project level of a waste of budget or time or expense, or at an organisational level that it's impacting your customer service, missed sales opportunities, people engagement and productivity, those costs are really significant. So whether you're a sales leader instigating change in your organisation, or you're a salesperson selling a product that is going to lead to change in your customer's organisation, or you're an account manager that is responsible for making sure that that product stays and is embedded, if you get your head around change management and change leadership, it's going to really enable your conversations to make that stick. I have a love-hate relationship with management theories, but one that is a go-to model that was founded in the early days of change management when it did include the human aspect, is John Kotter's 8 steps of change. And I like this, and I'm going to share some examples of recent, and when I say recent, in the last year, companies that have taken parts of this and really made it stick. So I've broken the 8 steps down into 3, just because I struggle to remember 8, but 3 does work for me. And half of John Kotter's 8 steps happen before you implement. And we've heard today some of the challenges if you implement too quickly. There are equally challenges if you implement too slowly, because lethargy builds in. So the first step is about creating a sense of urgency, and I like to think that as creating a sense of strategic urgency. Not too fast that you bypass all of the stages, and not too slow that people get bored or don't uptake that change in habit. Building a guiding coalition, bringing together the right number of people and from the right parts of that business that have a vested interest who can lead that project. And it may be that you use somebody from external to facilitate that conversation, somebody like Lauren who can kind of look at different parts and be that kind of guide to that team. Where it goes right is where you have between 4 and 6 people in that guiding coalition. Any more than that, and the communication triangle becomes really complicated. Any less than that, and you've not got enough weight of voice to generate the ideas and have the input to make it happen. Forming your strategic vision and initiatives, we've talked about that today already, and I think that's one of the easier things for you to grasp hold of, so we'll move through to enlisting a volunteer army. Many of you will have seen a video on YouTube that's got a semi-naked guy dancing in a field. He's at an event or a festival, and he's probably on LSD or some other happy drug, that he's really in the mood. And at the start of the video, the guy is dancing on his own, and the people around him are looking at him thinking, crazy guy. But what happens in the video is really interesting, because at some point, a second person joins that first person. And that second person takes that step to be with that leader who he becomes. But the second person isn't the most important person. Because when the second person joins that leader, everybody else thinks, what's that second person's motive? The most important people to follow the change are the third, fourth, and fifth people. They're the ones who make that change seem okay. So when you are piloting a project in your organization, you will probably know the people who will put their hands up first to volunteer. You will know that Dave, in sales, he will love it and he'll run with it. But all of Dave's colleagues also know the same. And they'll say, well, that's just Dave doing his thing. The most important people in your volunteer army are your second, third, and fourth people. So if you can recruit those people who have a really solid leadership voice, but within their peer group, you've got more chance of momentum taking place. So taking time to do the preparation, taking time to really put the steps into place and getting those people involved. What's next? You've got to make it happen. These are reasonably straightforward processes on the face of it, but in reality where it goes wrong is that the barriers that obviously will come up through the pilot group and inevitably will come up also when you roll it out to the wider audience is by having that energy and desire to remove those obstacles or move around those obstacles super fast. If you don't deal with it as soon as is possible with those barriers, the reputation of that whole project will be diminished and people will start to revert back to their previous habits. Generating short-term wins and celebrating short-term wins. I'm a fan of more carrot than stick, but you need to be able to do both and certainly understand what are your things you would like people to use that tech for, what should they use it, and what must they use it for. So you have some boundaries in there that can be very clear. And finally, about making it stick. Again, this is where change often goes wrong, is that you put the preparation in, it starts, and then the focus goes into some other aspect of the business. Making it stick in the long term is a real challenge for lots of organizations. How do you sustain the acceleration, and how do you institute that change? So whether you're a sales leader, whether you're a salesperson, whether you're an account manager looking after a customer, get your head around change management and change leadership to help you understand how to implement better. In terms of where you find the answers are on Google. But if you Google change management, you'll get 5 billion results in a second. Okay? The best answers for any problem that any of you face with regard to business challenges sit within this room. I would bet my house that if any of you had a business challenge and we shut the doors and you set you lot up as a group to get the answer, I'm convinced that you'd come up with great answers. So enjoy the networking today. If you do have any questions, reach out to the people in the room and enjoy the rest of the day. Cheers.